Let's talk about cop bashing. That's always fun, isn't it? Well, there can be a little confusion there, but we'll get to that in a second. It's a hot day out. It's been about 90 degrees here lately. In fact, we've had some pretty strange weather. It's almost like Oklahoma. It's like we've had tornadoes around here. In fact, we've had a tornado just about a mile from my house last weekend, and I don't know. I enjoy the heat, though. I'd rather be too hot than too cold. Except when I'm sleeping, then I'd rather be too cold. So, cop bashing. This is a term that likes to get thrown around quite a bit. In fact, there seems to be a very strange stigma, and I don't understand why. The white balance is all messed up here. Let's turn the light off. It seems that whenever you are a firearm owner and you stand up for your rights, generally there seems to be a stigma that you had better agree with everything cops do because that shows that you're a law-abiding citizen and the gun owners are law-abiding citizens. That's a bunch of nonsense. I don't agree with cop bashing as in because one cop did something bad, you have to lump all the groups together. I think that's ridiculous because it's the same way with gun owners. Just because somebody shot up the kids in the elementary school there doesn't mean that all gun owners do that. So yes, I agree with cop bashing being bad in that sense, but I also agree with calling a spade a spade. There was a video that caused a bit of a stir, and I'm going to post a link in the description, and it's basically this Department of Homeland Security. I'm not even sure it's cops. I don't know. It's probably one of those ridiculous three-letter acronyms that they like to give to all those organizations. I think it's the DHS. That's actually, in this case, the Department of Homeland Security. And if you go in this video, you'll see the DHS officers, or whatever they call themselves, not really coming up, driving their car across the lanes of traffic, their big SUV, to stop in front of this man, and which is already a very strange occurrence. If I ever had somebody do that, if I ever had somebody careen in an SUV onto my side of the sidewalk from the other lanes of traffic, that would put me on high alert already. But anyway, he drives up on the sidewalk and he gets out, and this person who was videotaping his walk down the street says, you know, hello, officers, is there anything I can do for you? And then, I would say like a liberal old lady in Massachusetts, the cop yells, "Gun! He's got a gun!" Apparently this gentleman was open carrying, something completely legal in the state that he was in. And that first of all, that's bad already, but I can kind of understand it when there is a gun presence. It's okay to make people informed of it if they're open carrying. It's not terribly great, but I don't have a complete problem with that. What I do have a problem with is the cop actually drawing his own weapon. That is completely unacceptable because, let's face it, a car careening across the road directly onto the sidewalk that you're on could have been cause for you to draw your own weapon, and if we have both going at it with guns, that could have been a very messy situation. But the point is, I think if you draw your gun on an open carrier who's not causing problems with anybody, doesn't have his hands on his gun, I think... Now, tell me if you have any problems with these sentiments. By the way, it's hot out today. Tell me if you have any problems with these sentiments. I think the cops should be fired. And that might even be a bit of a stretch. Honestly, I do think they should be fired, but at least reprimanded severely. And I think they should possibly face criminal charges because, let's face it, if it was a normal citizen, you can't just draw your firearm on anybody. That's something that you cannot do. If he had drawn and pointed the gun at the person, he just kept it at low ready, which he still drew it, which is totally unacceptable. If he had pointed it at the person, that should be definite criminal charges. Because the cop did not identify himself. It was a plain white SUV. I can't remember if the cop was in uniform, but put it this way. When a car comes careening from one side of the road to the other and a person gets out and draws their gun, you might not notice they're in uniform because the edges of your mind get a little bit fuzzy when you're in a fight or flight mode. Flight or flight mode. He didn't identify himself. If he would have pointed the gun at the person taking the video, the person, I believe, may have been justified in drawing and firing, and then you got a big mess. If one person dies, if the other person dies, it's a disaster. Now, if you think any of my thoughts are unreasonable on that, please let me know. If you think that it should have been alright that the cop drew his weapon on person following the law, that's totally fine. I'd like to hear it. But the problem is this whole cop bashing thing. This ridiculous stigma that comes along with if you support the Second Amendment and stuff like that, you must support all police officers. I don't. I'm not even going to pretend to say that I support all police officers. Now, before we say, oh, there you are, those gun-crazy people just can't stand up to authority, that's absolutely ridiculous. If cops are doing their job, cop, that's totally fine. If they are there to actually serve and protect, that's fine. I always hear endless stories, and unfortunately I hear endless stories about cops that helped the little old lady across the street, or there was a woman at a home in her house and she heard a bump in the night and there was actually a rapist outside, but the cops came and took care of it. That's fine. Unfortunately, I hear a lot of those stories justifying why, we shouldn't cop bash, but then again, I don't do that anyway. That's ridiculous. Where was I? Oh, I said there's this crazy stigma that all people that support the Second Amendment and the gun rights have to be totally 100% cops. I think that's ridiculous. I think the actual opposite should be true. I think if we're here to preserve freedom and preserve this Constitution and be pro-freedom, and that's where the party lines get a little bit ridiculous, because I think people should have the choice to what they want to do, being pro-life or pro-choice, and I feel just as strong about gun rights. That's where those two party line things gets ridiculous. That's why I'm a libertarian. This is where the whole cop bashing thing gets ridiculous, because I think that you should always be looking objectively at a situation. Whether that means ignoring the Bible, or ignoring this, or ignoring common sense because everybody says that it's common sense, or another one, ignoring somebody just because they put a badge on, ignoring a stigma that somebody's supposed to have because they put a badge on. I think it's a terrible thing that you would not question things. I think you should judge people based on their actions, not what uniform they put on. Just like you should judge gun owners based on their actions, not that they own a scary assault rifle. Nonsense. And let's talk about another hot topic issue: drug use. I don't think you should base people's. I don't think you should judge people on if they use drugs or not. I think you should use people on how they act. If they shoot up heroin and then decide to beat their wife, you should probably not look too highly of that person. If they sit down after work, have a beer, smoke a joint, that should be totally fine. There shouldn't even be a stigma. And if you're a police officer and you act like a jackass, like I feel that the people in this video have done, again, if you think that's unjust, and by the way, there are 2 parts to this video, you can click the sidebar, because I'm not going to find the other link, you can click the sidebar to find part 2, where the chief comes over to try to justify this action. And if you think that I'm wrong and they just totally acted right drawing their firearm on a man that was not doing anything wrong, then by all means let me know. Let me hear your take on it. But I'm just so sick of this ridiculous, if you question cops, which are the ones that should be questioned, we should be questioning the government, we should be questioning the cops, because when you don't, people become complacent and strange things can happen, and look at our country nowadays. You should always be skeptical, and especially of your government. Those are the ones you should be the most skeptical about. Not, oh, you question your government, what are you, anti-American? Those are the ones you should be most questioned about. You should question them the most. And when we don't, bad things happen. Again, in part 2 of this video, the chief comes across to try to justify what has happened. To me, that's no different than if a cop arrests somebody and he's already in handcuffs trying to explain his way out of it. Usually that still means you're going to get a ride in the cop car. And this brings up again the phrase that ignorance to the law is no excuse. And it's no more true than ever here. I don't understand why people think that should only go in one direction. Sir, I had 8 rounds in my magazine, but the Führer said we should only have 7. Well, ignorance to the law is no excuse, young man. And don't just think I'm being a cop there. That could be anybody. That could be one of these liberal idiots that say, well, I don't think you should get off. Ignorance to the law is no excuse. No, if you think it can go in that direction where the citizens can be charged with it, I, without a doubt, think it should go in the other direction. If you draw your firearm on an innocent civilian who isn't doing anything wrong, hasn't even been so much as suspected of a crime, you should face the consequences. That goes for anything. That goes for the people that call up saying, there's a person in my neighborhood with a gun, oh my god. If it's legal to have a gun in the neighborhood at that time, legal to open carry, and you call, you should face some sort of consequences. The ignorance to the law is no excuse. I feel very strongly about that. That should go both ways. If they decide to make that go away in both respects, as in they can't just use the cop-out, well, ignorance to the law is no excuse, because there are so many stupid laws today that I'm ignorant of most of them, and I know quite a few. If they made it go away both, I could definitely see saying, well, the cop didn't realize that this law was changed, or you can only have 7 rounds, this and that. But until then, I definitely think we should be held to the same standards. And the disgusting acts that I see in this video, that's what I'm going to call it. If you have a problem with any of that, let me know, because, again, it seems that some people might get, hell, I don't know, a little bit butthurt when I call out the police officers who are not properly doing their job. In every other profession, you can get called out for not doing your job properly. Hell, I get called out at work sometimes, and I'm the fucking supervisor. I'm the lifeguard supervisor, in fact, and I still have my boss come over and say, well, you know, we have people on diving board, you should probably send a lifeguard over there, and this and that. And that's fine, because people scrutinize my job. That's how you get better at your job. But when we have a profession that just can't be questioned, that's very dangerous. And the fact that there's a stigma that gun owners must support this, they can support their law enforcement officers, but the best way to support them is to make sure they get better by questioning actions that are questionable. So yes, I recently got banned for expressing such views. I think some people will start to realize that that's not, you know, totally right. I don't think that's totally justified. I got banned from one of my forums for expressing such views. Excuse me. When in reality, other people in that forum had the same thoughts. Except I guess I'm just more vocal. Look at me. I got this YouTube channel here. You know, a lot of people happen to see me. Some people, I speak a lot of the things that some people are thinking about. I guess that's what it is. And but hey, you know, I'm not gonna lose any sleep over it. If that's the kind of censorship that you want, that's your choice. Because let's not forget the First Amendment and stuff like that does not exist on internet forums because they're not government controlled. A lot of people get confused with that. Oh, that's violating the First Amendment. No, it's not. It's private entity. They can ban anybody they want, but anybody that they want. And it shows. That means that it's totally their choice. It shows that if you present a dissenting view, you will be censored. And if that's the kind of thing that you want to stand up for while claiming to stand up for the Second Amendment, that's your choice. You know, I've always been the person that thinks you should support all parts of the Constitution. Some people often forget about are the First, the Second, the Fourth, the 14th, the 5th. I think if you support one part of the Constitution, you should support it all. You can't say, you know, I'm going to have these amazing gay pride parades and it's their freedom of speech, and then say, but you can't have any guns. I think that's ridiculous. Much in the same way, you can't say we should have our guns, but I don't want to hear you talking about, you know, questioning the cops. You should actually be promoting that, but hey, that's just me. So I hope you enjoyed this little video here on cop bashing, and if anybody accuses you of it, take an objective look at that. If they're just saying that as a cop-out, which it often is, haha, but Tish, I made a pun, then you need to remind them that questioning a job isn't bashing that job. You can still respect what they do while still questioning to make it better. Alright, thanks for watching. Take it easy, guys.